The flashing lights and wailing sirens stopped me mid-flip. There I was, standing beside my prized smoker, tongs in hand, watching in disbelief as 3 fire trucks barreled down our quiet suburban street. The perfect May afternoon, sunny, with just enough breeze to carry the mouth-watering aroma of smoked meat across the neighborhood, had suddenly transformed into something resembling an emergency scene from a television drama. My guests froze, drinks halfway to their lips, conversations dying instantly as all eyes turned toward the commotion. Children who had been playing cornhole in the side yard ran to their parents, and my golden retriever, Buddy, started barking frantically from his spot under the oak tree. As firefighters in full gear jumped out and hustled toward my backyard, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. This was supposed to be a day of celebration and community, not whatever disaster was now unfolding. The confusion on my face must have been evident as I stood there, utterly bewildered, with a perfectly seasoned piece of brisket hanging precariously from my tongs. And there, standing at the edge of my property, arms crossed and a smug smile plastered across her face, was Linda Haraman, our neighborhood's self-appointed homeowners association enforcer. Everyone just called her the Karen of Oakwood Estates behind her back, though never to her face. Today, she was dressed in what I could only describe as suburban battle armor, pressed khaki capris, a crisp white polo shirt with the collar turned up, and oversized designer sunglasses perched on her nose. Despite the shade from her wide-brimmed gardening hat, she dramatically pointed at my smoker, which was gently releasing a thin plume of hickory-scented smoke into the air. "There. Right there," she shouted, her voice carrying across the yard, sharp enough to cut through the general commotion. "That's the illegal open flame," I reported. "It's a fire hazard and completely against homeowners association regulations. I've been telling everyone for months that this was dangerous." Several of my guests exchanged uncomfortable glances, while others looked downright angry at Linda's intrusion. My next-door neighbor, Tom, who had been enjoying a cold beer and conversation just moments before, stepped slightly forward as if to intervene, but I subtly shook my head. Confrontation would only make things worse. The fire captain approached my setup with purposeful strides, his expression unreadable as he removed his helmet. He was a tall man with salt and pepper hair trimmed in a military-style crew cutting deep creases around his eyes that suggested years of stressful situations, though I doubted many involved barbecue disputes. I braced myself for the worst, my annual cookout ruined, my reputation in the neighborhood tarnished, and the considerable sum I'd spent on premium cuts of meat potentially wasted. More importantly, the local food pantry would miss out on much-needed donations. But then, something unexpected happened. The captain took one long whiff of the smoking brisket, his nostrils flaring slightly as he inhaled the complex aroma of hickory smoke and my secret spice blend. He carefully looked over my meticulously maintained equipment, noting the temperature gauge, the proper ventilation, and the clear absence of any actual flames, just the beautiful thin blue smoke that indicated perfect combustion. And then he smiled. It was slight at first, just a twitch at the corner of his mouth, but it quickly spread into something genuine and appreciative. He turned to Linda, whose smug expression was beginning to falter as she realized things weren't proceeding as she'd envisioned, and then back to me. "For you, a free like is easy. But for me, it is the greatest support and encouragement. For this video, can you give me 1 like and 1 subscription? Thank you very much. Mind if I take a look at what you're cooking there?" he asked, his tone curious rather than accusatory. The question hung in the air, and I noticed a few of my guests exhale in relief. Linda's jaw dropped as the captain leaned in to inspect my slow-cooked masterpiece, and I swear I heard her make a small choking sound when he used a clean knife to cut a small inspection slice from the edge of my brisket. The perfect pink smoke ring was visible even from where I stood, a testament to 12 hours of careful temperature control and the right blend of woods. The captain's eyebrows raised in appreciation, and I knew he recognized quality when he saw it. "That," he said, pointing to my brisket with obvious admiration, "might be the best-looking smoke ring I've seen outside a competition." He ran his finger along the edge of the meat, where the beautiful pink coloration contrasted with the dark, bark-like exterior and a juicy interior, perfect color, consistent thickness all the way around. How long you been smoking? When I told him I'd been at it for nearly 15 years, including 3 on the competition circuit, he nodded knowingly. Makes sense. This is expert-level work. And then, to Linda's visible horror, he removed his gloves, tucked them into his belt, and asked, with a grin that seemed to say, let's give this Karen something to really complain about. To grow even wider as Linda's expression darkened. Any chance you've got an extra plate? He asked. After responding to a call about dangerous barbecue, I think it's my professional duty to conduct a thorough investigation. One of the other firefighters chuckled behind him, and I could see the tension in the yard start to dissipate like smoke in a summer breeze. I hadn't always been the neighborhood's barbecue guy. 5 years ago, I was actually competing on the regional barbecue circuit, traveling most weekends to events across 3 states. My garage had been filled with trophies, ribbons, and oversized novelty checks from various competitions. I'd even placed 3rd at the Smoky Mountains Throwdown, which was no small feat considering the talent that shows up there, pitmasters who had appeared on television shows and had their own signature sauce lines in grocery stores. Back then, barbecue was practically my second career. I'd work my regular job as an architectural draftsman Monday through Thursday, then hit the road Thursday evening with my custom trailer smoker in tow, ready for whatever weekend competition awaited. The competition circuit had been exhilarating, the camaraderie among competitors, the secret techniques everyone guarded jealously, the nervous anticipation as judges sampled your carefully prepared entries. I developed a reputation for my brisket and spicy burnt ends, though my pulled pork had always been my personal favorite. I still remember the judge at the Memphis qualifier who tasted my pulled pork sandwich and simply closed his eyes for a full 10 seconds before making any notes. That silent moment had been worth more than any trophy. But when my daughter, Lily, was born, everything changed. Those weekend competitions suddenly meant time away from those precious early moments, first smiles, attempts at crawling. The indescribable joy of returning home to her recognition after missing her first attempts at standing because I was competing in a barbecue competition 3 states away. I decided to hang up my competition apron and settle into a more stable routine. The trophies went into storage, the trailer smoker was sold to an up-and-coming competitor, and I downsized to a still impressive but more backyard-appropriate offset smoker that I could wheel out for special occasions. That's when my wife and I found Oakwood Estates, a quiet neighborhood with decent-sized backyards and, most importantly to me, no restrictions on outdoor cooking equipment, or so I thought when we signed those papers. We'd fallen in love with the spacious 4-bedroom colonial with its wrap-around porch and mature oak trees in the backyard. The real estate agent had assured us that the homeowners association was practically dormant and that the neighborhood was known for its relaxed, family-friendly atmosphere. The inspection had gone well, the financing had been approved without a hitch, and within 6 weeks, we were moving boxes into what we planned would be our forever home. People would move in during winter, so it wasn't until spring that I set up my custom-built smoker, a beautiful offset design that I'd saved for months to purchase. The first few neighborhood cookouts were small affairs, just a few friends and some neighbors who'd caught the scent of smoked ribs wafting over their fences. People seemed to love it, and word spread. By the second year, I'd turned it into a fundraiser for the local food pantry, charging a small donation for plates of competition-quality barbecue. Everyone won, the neighbors got an amazing meal, the food pantry got much-needed funds, and I got to keep my pitmaster skills sharp without leaving my family every weekend. Everyone was happy, except Linda. She'd moved into the neighborhood just after we did and immediately appointed herself as the unofficial Homeowners Association president, despite the fact that our Homeowners Association had been largely inactive for years. Linda was the type who measured grass with a ruler and left passive-aggressive notes about garbage can placement. But my annual cookout seemed to bother her more than anything else. She complained about smoke damage to her patio furniture, despite living 3 houses away, noise pollution from people enjoying themselves, and what she called the unsightly gathering of vehicles on our street once a year. This year, Linda had taken her campaign to a new level. 2 weeks before the cookout, she started posting in the neighborhood social media group about toxic smoke and fire dangers. She distributed flyers about air quality and noise ordinances, making sure to slip one under my door with certain sections highlighted in neon yellow. 3 days before the event, she cornered my wife in the grocery store and warned her that steps would be taken if we proceeded with our hazardous gathering. My wife came home upset, but I assured her everything would be fine. I checked and double-checked all local fire codes and even the dusty old homeowners association bylaws. My setup was completely compliant. I'd made sure of it. The morning of the cookout, I woke up at 4 a.m. to start the smoker. The brisket and pork shoulder needed a good 12 hours to reach perfection, and guests would be arriving around 4 p.m. Everything was going smoothly. The temperature was holding steady, the meat was taking on that beautiful mahogany color, and my backyard was transformed with tables, chairs, and festive string lights. My daughter, now 5, had even set up a lemonade stand to add her own contribution to the food pantry donation. By 3:30 p.m., the first guests were arriving, bringing side dishes and desserts to complement the main attraction. I should have known Linda wouldn't just let it go. I was rotating the brisket when my neighbor, Tom, rushed over, his expression grim. "She did it," he said, shaking his head. Linda actually called 911, said there was an uncontrolled fire threatening the neighborhood. I thought he was joking until I heard the sirens in the distance. My heart sank as I watched my daughter's eyes widen with fear and my guests began exchanging worried glances. This wasn't just about me anymore. Linda was ruining an event that was meant to bring the community together and help those in need. The fire trucks arrived with full lights and sirens, a complete Code 3 response. I later learned that Linda had reported dangerous flames visible from the street and thick black smoke endangering nearby homes. The reality, of course, was a well-maintained smoker producing the thin blue smoke that every pitmaster aims for. Still, I couldn't blame the firefighters for responding as they did. False or not, they had to treat every call as legitimate. As they approached my backyard, I stepped forward with my hands up, tongs still clutched in my right hand. "Officers, I can explain everything," I said, trying to keep my voice calm despite the anger and embarrassment bubbling up inside me. "This is a controlled cooking appliance, not an open fire. I verified that it meets all local codes." The first firefighter, a younger guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, began inspecting my setup while his colleagues surveyed the yard. Linda stood at the edge of my property, pointing and speaking animatedly to anyone who would listen. The tension in the air was palpable, and I could see my annual fundraiser crumbling before my eyes. That's when everything changed. A large, older man in a white shirt with additional insignia stepped through the gate. Even if I hadn't recognized him, I would have known from the respectful way the other firefighters deferred to him that this was someone important. But I did recognize him. Chief Michael Sullivan had been a judge at the Smoky Mountains Throwdown where I'd placed 3 years ago. He was a certified barbecue enthusiast himself and had even written a cookbook combining fire safety tips with barbecue recipes. The chief walked directly to my smoker, inspected it carefully, and then looked up at me with narrowed eyes. For one terrible moment, I thought perhaps I had missed something in the code, some technicality that would shut us down. Then his face broke into a wide grin. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, extending his hand. "You're Jim Harrison, aren't you? That brisket with the coffee rub at Smoky Mountains. I still think about that meat sometimes." Relief flooded through me as I shook his hand. "Yes, sir. Didn't expect you to remember that." The chief laughed. "I never forget exceptional barbecue, son." He turned to his team, who were still dutifully checking the perimeter of my yard. "Everything's fine here, boys. This man knows what he's doing." Then, turning back to me with a twinkle in his eye, he added, "Mind if I jump in? It's been a while since I've tended a proper smoker." I couldn't believe what was happening. One minute I'd been facing potential fines and the end of my annual tradition, and the next, the fire chief himself was asking to help with the cooking. I handed him an apron without hesitation. "Would be an honor, Chief Sullivan." As he tied the apron around his waist, I caught sight of Linda's face. Her smug smile had vanished, replaced by an expression of utter disbelief and growing horror. She pushed through the small crowd that had gathered, her finger pointing accusingly. "This is completely inappropriate," she sputtered. "I reported a dangerous situation, and you're joining the party? I demand to speak to your supervisor." Chief Sullivan turned to her, his expression pleasantly neutral but his voice firm. "Ma'am, I am the supervisor, and after a thorough inspection, I've determined there's no fire hazard here." He gestured to my smoker. "This is a properly maintained cooking appliance, being operated responsibly by someone who clearly knows what he's doing." Linda wasn't giving up that easily. "But the smoke. The Homeowners Association regulations clearly state." The chief cut her off gently but firmly. "Ma'am, I'm not here to enforce Homeowners Association rules. I'm here to ensure public safety, and I can assure you there's no safety issue here." His expression hardened slightly. "Concerned about is the misuse of emergency services. 911 is for actual emergencies, not for neighborhood disputes." If I'd thought Linda looked horrified before, it was nothing compared to her expression now. Her face flushed deep red as the chief continued. "We responded with 3 units to what was reported as an uncontrolled fire. That's resources that could have been needed elsewhere for an actual emergency." He glanced around at the gathering, which had grown as more neighbors arrived, curious about the commotion. "I'll have to finally report about this incident, and there may be consequences for filing a false emergency report. For you, a free like is easy. But for me, it is the greatest support and encouragement. For this video, can you give me 1 like and 1 subscription? Thank you very much." Linda opened and closed her mouth several times, looking like a fish out of water. Finally, she turned on her heel and stormed off toward her house, muttering about calling her attorney, and this isn't over. But it was over, at least for today. As she retreated, I could almost feel the collective sigh of relief from everyone present. And then, something magical started to happen. The chief wasn't just making a point. He genuinely wanted to help with the barbecue. He rolled up his sleeves and asked me about my technique, sharing some of his own tips as we worked side by side. The other firefighters, who had been preparing to leave, started to linger, drawn in by the incredible smells and the increasingly festive atmosphere. Chief Sullivan radioed in that they would remain on site to ensure continued compliance, which everyone understood was his way of giving his team permission to stay and enjoy the event. Word spread quickly throughout the neighborhood. The fire trucks parked on our street became an unexpected attraction, with children climbing aboard for impromptu tours given by off-duty firefighters. More neighbors arrived, many of whom had never attended before, curious about the commotion and excited by the unusual turn of events. What had started as a potential disaster had transformed into the biggest, most successful cookout yet. The chief was a natural showman, calling out cooking tips as he helped me prepare serving platters of perfectly smoked meat. "See this pink ring," he announced to a gathered crowd, pointing to the edge of the sliced brisket. "That's the mark of properly smoked meat, not undercooked, but a chemical reaction from the smoking process. It's what every pitmaster aims for." People clapped and crowded closer, eager to learn and even more eager to taste. As the evening progressed, my daughter's lemonade stand sold out completely. The donation jar for the food pantry filled up so quickly that we had to empty it twice into a secure box. The firefighters, touched by the purpose of the event, pulled together their own donation and even radioed other off-duty colleagues to come join the festivities. By sunset, our backyard and the adjacent street had transformed into a block-wide celebration. Music played, children darted between groups of chatting adults, and the smell of smoked meat hung pleasantly in the air. Through it all, I caught occasional glimpses of Linda peering through her blinds or standing at the edge of her property, arms crossed, watching the joy she had failed to squash. But even her sullen presence couldn't dampen the incredible atmosphere. In fact, it almost enhanced it, a visual reminder of how pettiness had been overcome by community spirit. The climax of the evening came when Chief Sullivan gathered everyone's attention with a small speech. "Folks, I've been fighting fires for 27 years, and I've judged barbecue competitions across 3 states. I know danger when I see it, and I know good food when I taste it." He raised his plate. "This event is not only safe, it's something to be proud of. You've got a real pitmaster in your neighborhood, and he's using his talents to help your local food pantry. That's the kind of community spirit we should all aspire to." Cheers erupted, and several people patted me on the back. The chief continued, "In fact, I'm so impressed by what you all have going here that I'd like to make a proposal. The fire department has been looking for ways to better connect with the communities we serve. How would you feel about making this event a partnership with us next year? We could bring some equipment for the kids, share some fire safety tips, and maybe," he winked at me, "contribute a few secret ingredients to the rub." The crowd loved it, and I was speechless. What had started as a small neighborhood cookout had somehow grown into an official community event with fire department backing. As we shook hands on the impromptu partnership, someone took a photo of the chief and me in our matching, sauce-stained aprons, standing proudly beside my smoker. That photo would end up changing everything. By the next morning, that image had gone viral on local social media. A local news website picked it up with the headline, "Fire Chief Answers Barbecue Emergency with Ribs." The story spread quickly, with people charmed by the tale of a false alarm turned community celebration. Donations to the food pantry continued to pour in, with people from neighboring towns asking how they could contribute. By the end of the week, we'd raised more money than the previous 4 cookouts combined. The fire department's social media account shared the story, too, using it as an opportunity to remind people about the proper use of emergency services while highlighting their community involvement. Chief Sullivan gave a brief interview to the local news station, where he managed to work in both barbecue tips and fire safety advice, ending with an invitation to the public to join next year's expanded event. "For you, a free like is easy. But for me, it is the greatest support and encouragement. For this video, can you give me 1 like and 1 subscription? Thank you very much." And Linda. 3 weeks after the cookout, she received an official citation for misuse of emergency services, along with a fine that I later heard was substantial. The police were discreet about it, but in a small neighborhood, word gets around. The same day she received her citation, she also got a letter from the actual homeowners association board. Apparently awakened from years of inactivity by the recent events, they clarified that outdoor cooking equipment was indeed permitted under the neighborhood covenants. Furthermore, they stated that Linda had never been authorized to speak or act on behalf of the homeowners association. They also gently reminded all residents that the annual community barbecue fundraiser had now been officially added to the neighborhood's sanctioned events calendar, with the full support of the local fire department.